firstly, thank you, Scott, for joining us this morning. For everybody's benefit, I know most people will know who you are in the audience watching this in our networks and circles, but head of teaching, learning and digital, have I got that right, at Basingstoke College of Technology, of course, a very well-known college. Great friend to C Learning. I'm joined by my colleague at C Learning, Mark, for this conversation about AI this morning. I'm really looking forward to the conversation, which is an open and frank conversation about the transformational power, if you like, of AI, the good, the bad, and some emerging lessons, I think, of what we're learning from it as well. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts, Scott, and thank you so much for your generosity in joining us this morning as well to have a bit of a chat about this as well. I know the demands on your time. I watched your social media profile this week, and you're dashing from DigiFest to where you delivered a fantastic keynote, I believe. I heard some amazing feedback from that, so looked awesome.
Standing ovation, I heard.
I believe.
Oh, no standing ovation, Mark. But it was I don't know, it's difficult to tell the reaction, but thank you for your kind words nonetheless.
Yeah, no, it was. I had some amazing comments, which was no surprise to me, because in all the time we've known each other, you've always taken a really open, innovative approach to testing the art of the possible with technologies, but always with a laser focus on how it makes life better for people. So in a really, really wise sort of way. And that's one of the things I think we'll tease out in the conversation today. But I want to start, unfortunately, with a slightly negative kind of question, but we'll move on to some of the more positive stuff in a minute. But I suppose, without wishing to be too negative about it, we all know that with new things, there can sometimes be unintended consequences and problems, and we have to learn and adapt from that. And I know that you're very much at the forefront of this, because going back to last year, you were one of the first people I knew in this country. And we work all over the world, but in the UK, you were definitely right at the front of having given some really significant thought to how tools like AI in particular might benefit us, but also thinking about some things where it might cause a few issues. So in your words, Scott, what would you say from a teaching and learning point of view that some of the sort of main concerns would be that you've seen with AI?
My main concerns around AI, I suppose, are a natural extension of my concerns about technology in general. In the last couple of years, I've gone through a real existential crisis about my relationship to technology, is the truth. I know that I am microdosing myself with AIs every day, whether it be my LinkedIn, checking those notifications on those posts this week you just mentioned, Jamie. I'm a 41-year-old man who could not help myself but look. And also I could not help myself but look at the comments on the live stream that accompanied my keynote at the DigiFest, or main stage talk I did. And seeing those comments, like my central nervous system was just being shocked and delighted and pumped full of dopamine, and then sort of robbed of it. And I was just, and I'm supposedly an expert or someone who knows a bit about these things, and that's just social media. What we see with generative AI is a micro dosing of ourselves with personalized, intimate AIs that we know how it can distract and detach and keep us perhaps at arm's length from long-term meaningful relationships and experiences because we are so consumed with instantaneous gratification. But what my concerns with generative AI is that, as Tristan Harrison Azaraskin from the Centre for Humane Technology put it, our first point of contact with AI was social media. And look how that changed the world in 2016. Brexit, Trump, and all the rest of it, with personalized algorithms and fake news. What we're now seeing in 2024, the year of the election, is I think we need to do what Taiwan are doing, to be quite honest with you, in terms of pre-bunking, inoculating a population against fake news and deep fakes by showing them, teaching them, giving them examples like the digital minister Audrey Tang has done so well there, showing deep fakes of herself. So when the inevitable deep fakes came just before the election in January of this year, the Taiwanese went, that's like that thing Audrey showed us, that's not real. And they were the antibodies to deal with it. And that's magnificent. And so we're trying to do something similar here with our videos of Anthony speaking other languages and other things that are coming soon. We've got a policy safeguarding, we're trying our best to safeguard against the inevitable wave of text, image, audio, and video fakery that's coming our way. But yeah, I'm not one to dwell on the negatives, but I have to be mindful of it.
Absolutely. And you've almost beautifully segued into the next question I was going to ask you, actually, which you were just touching upon there, some of the ways that we can perhaps flip it and think about how we can use AI ethically and responsibly, where it prioritizes human well-being. Now, I know that way back in our early conversations, going back probably a couple of years now, Scott, this is one of the things that I remember you were very focused on around well-being and health, not just with AI, but with technology in general. But I think it's particularly relevant to the exact points you were just making with AI, because I think it's a different kind of challenge now. But thinking about it in the more positive way that you were just touching on then, when you were coming to a close with your key points there, any thoughts, given your leadership in this area, around how we can prioritize human well-being with these tools? Because I know you've got some great work going on around that.
Yeah, thanks, mate. I think, well, in May, June of 2023, we turned on Google Gemini, as it is now known, for all staff, because we know they're about to spend their summer doing planning, schemes of work, resource creation, and so on. And by showing our staff, well, before even that, we did the empathy mapping process where we sit with the staff in staff rooms and we tried to shift our perspective to theirs. And they were already grumbling about, oh, okay, here it comes, another summer of, planning. Was we gave them this superpower and we gave them the prompt and we scaffolded it in a very precise way. Like, here's one prompt, which gives you your objectives and the impact, knowledge, skills, and behaviors. And those two prompts generated schemes of work and tapestries of learning at a rate and a consistency and standardization likes of which we've not seen before. I've been here 15 years now, and in that time our planning's never been as good as it is right now.
Brilliant.
And that's freed up teachers to go, now I can focus on being more relaxing in the summer to start with, and focus more on the human tasks in the classroom that I need to focus on. And by focusing on people who are expert teachers as well as our new teachers, they had that instantaneous win. And we gave them that prompt document as well, in a Google Doc, where they could zoom to any prompt they want, whether it be explaining something like I'm 10 years old, simplifying things in 10 simple steps, whether it be using metaphors and analogies that relate to a topic of interest to an individual. Our staff have been working with these since May and June of last year, and actually using Google Gemini. This, if we've got Google licenses, it's available there. And Teachermatic we used a little bit as well. Canva, bloody hell, Canva's quite something. So that's those incremental gains, those 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Even things like Goblin.tools, where you can put in some text, formalize it, and sure enough, it will format it in different styles. Select a drop down, more professional, more snarky, whatever you want.
So it seems to me as well, in that mix, Scott, what you've done quite well that not everybody does is you've got quite a focused suite of productivity tools there. Because I know you use Google Workspace, I know you use Gemini, I know you use Canva, you mentioned Teachermatic, but you've got just a handful, less than 10 or so, it seems to me, key productivity tools that you've really focused on and made sure that people can use in a really impactful way. And I think that's something you've done especially well from what you're saying.
Thank you. It's overwhelming. It's too much. It was overwhelming before, November 30th, 2022, whenever it was, and ChatGPT happened, So this is, it's down to us to forage, curate, and bring back to the tribe, things that are of use, while all the while teaching our staff to be critical consumers. So we went around to staff rooms, rather than waiting in our learning hub and saying, well, we put on CPD, but no one came. We know they're tired. They know they've got no time. So we went to them in their staff rooms and classrooms and team meetings and just said, right, 20 minutes. Here's how this works. Everybody, here's the prompts, pop it into Bard. Away you go. And then everyone had that experience before the summer. And they were also shown how Snapchat AI can generate distinction level work in 5 or 6 prompts. So that was difficult, because I know a lot of staff really frustrated at me for showing that publicly. But then again, we've always been good at embracing authentic assessment.
Yeah.
Our staff, not so much, but I know external staff, when I showed that, they were really, and I found that really difficult, being a lightning rod for a lot of people's frustrations about this, because I've put my head up above the parapet, you know. So universities I've shared this with, and other people at colleges have been challenging in their comments and their I don't know, the best way I can describe the general sentiment of some people is meh, you know, that noise, rather than I can't really articulate it in a word. So that's not really helpful for the article, but
absolutely. I think it's always, you always get a bit of that when you're doing the kind of work that you do that's innovative and different, and also it's new and it's scary to a lot of people as well. But I think you do a particularly amazing job of making people feel comfortable to innovate in a safe space, and I think that's partly one of the reasons behind the success of you in the college is Basingstoke is that factor. Final question from me before I hand over to Mark, just to ask a few questions, and then I'll come back with a few more questions later on. I know that, again, something I've picked up on with your work over the years is your focus on health and well-being in particular. And I just wondered, we're all aware, anyone who's worked in or around education knows that there is a growing mental health crisis in education for lots of reasons we won't have the time to go into today. But what I'd really welcome your insights on, Scott, given the work you do, is thinking about mental health. Do you think AI has got a role to play in helping or not the crisis we see with mental health? Does it have a positive role to play maybe there, possibly as some sort of coach or mentor or something maybe? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh man, this is a highly addictive, like, psychosocial environment we're working within now, and it's baked into our everyday to a point where we're not even conscious of a lot of these AIs and how they are extremely subtle, swimming with our cognitive biases and always there. And I think we're moving from the attention economy to the intimacy economy, where we're going to have these perfect friends, AIs, these instant answers. And I think I'm really worried about it. I really am. But I do think if we approach it deliberately, mindfully, and intentionally, as a personal assistant that we're critical of, we can use it to take over tasks, not jobs, tasks. Yeah. And so in terms of admin, in terms of helping with reports, in terms of planning, in terms of resource creation, in terms of giving more time back to be more present in the classroom for those human knee-to-knee, person-to-person, memorable learning experiences, those live, got to be there projects. I think the knock-on effect of this means that teachers will have more time and energy to be better teachers. I think the knock-on effect of using AI for these reasons will be that we have better assessment. Vivas, witness statements, vlogs, blogs, sites, podcasts, you know, projects relating to the local community. I think there's the knock-on effect of using AI to free up teacher time is fascinating if we get that right and prioritize teacher well-being. And if the teachers understand how it can be useful, then of course they eventually can show their students how to use it as well. So I think the domino that needs to fall first is prioritizing teacher well-being, showing how it can save them time. Beginning of the year, it worked really well for us. The stats, good 5.1 hours saved for staff across the college, lovely. However, I'm talking to you in March, and it's marking season, and I want to be able to say to staff, use it to mark. Yeah. But the ambiguity about what we can and can't do is challenging. So we're finding, I've done some controlled prototypes with consenting adult learners, and I can tell you this, it is 20 times better than I've ever been as an assessor. It is more objective, and it is making me improve my game as an educator when I'm marking, taking away my biases and challenging me and formalizing and speeding me up in a way that I never anticipated. It's shown me that I tip the scales in favor of students. If I know they're struggling, going through something, or just need a break, I'm more likely to give them a pass. The AI is coming back to me and saying, actually, Scott, it's not quite a pass yet, and here's why. And I've got a sparring partner that is helping me go at a speed I've never had, which in turn is giving me more energy to be more present and human with the staff that I support. Wow. And I And then I want to be able to unlock this for teachers, because I know if we get this right in terms of assessment and feedback, and it isn't abdicating responsibility, this is having an extra marker and alongside you.
Yeah.
If we get this right, we change everything, because that is the piece. If we get assessment right and help people to realize that they can assess a quicker, more efficient, more objective way, always being skeptical of the output and editing, of course, then we might just retain a golden generation of teachers.
If I could stand up and give you a standing ovation, I would at this point, because that was the comments you made there. I'm glad we're recording this, because wow, I 100% what you just said. I couldn't endorse that more, really. I think you've just perfectly encapsulated the art of the possible with this one, and there's a whole bunch of questions I could come back to on some of the points you made there, because that was awesome. But I'm going to hand over to Mark now and stop hogging the limelight, and hand over to Mark to ask you a few questions. But that was amazing. You gave me a lot to think about from that answer, Scott. Thank you. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, mate. It's true. It's like that. If that's where they are now, they're on their knees in February and March, and I feel immense guilt going around doing like these presentations. Immense guilt, because I know the reality of their day to day. But at the same time, I feel like if we get this right now, we change everything. And so I'm willing to, those people online who are going, what about this, what about that, and just like really challenging me in a way that isn't, the intentions aren't always good. Quite mean-spirited sometimes, some of the comments and private messages I've been getting. I know I can withstand that, even though I'm an overly sensitive man.
You're gonna get some of that, because your profile is so high now, for want of a better way of putting it, and rightly so. But on that point, I'd say that there's always more supporters out there than detractors, and the work you're doing is just exceptional. Hence, we're having this conversation. And what you just said, I think anyone who understands teaching and learning and wants to make the world a smarter and better place for teaching and learning would just 100% endorse the previous answer you just gave, like 100%. But that was just awesome to hear. Mark, I know you've got a few points you want to bounce off Scott.
Thank you, Jamie. So, Scott, I just want to dig into something that you touched on there before we go on to the questions that I planned for you. And for me, coming back to the negativity, and I love the voice you've applied to your negative critiques out on the web there. That's a great characterization. If they sound like that, then I can see why they would sound like that. Anyway, my question is, you've talked about the nature of assessment, and the reason I believe you're getting good and bad feedback is you're challenging an establishment that's hundreds of years old, which is, learning is something for some where there's a huge amount of reading involved, a huge amount of research, a huge amount of time invested in coming up with an answer, right? So we have to really consider what a valuable use of students' time going forwards. Is it that they spend, potentially, if you're studying something very complex and intense, you spend a month in a library reading lots of textbooks? Or is it okay for somebody to spend an hour putting together some very, very interesting prompts that deliver not just that same information, but a broader reach of that information, from resources that they could never access in the traditional way? So what you do, I feel like what you're openly doing is challenging a very old established industry in lots of ways, but equally you already have said in this conversation that assessment isn't just about regurgitating facts, simulating information, being critical of the information, having that kind of a higher order thinking skills applied to it. There can be other ways that our students of the future spend their time wisely. What do you see as the future of assessment, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
So this year, we've had lots of our curriculum areas come to us with their assignment briefs and said, well, this is what it's been. And we're good as a college. We're vocational, we're hands-on, and we're aligned with industry, and we're very proud of that fact. And we've had, for many years, great people, travel and tourism, making Google sites with Google Earth tours embedded in it, and vlogs with green screens of the students presenting and showing their tour. And we've had this for many years across all of our areas. Beauty students showing photographs annotated with audio notes of them talking through their process, their iteration, their development. And we've had that for many years. However, of course, there are still many areas that still go to the essay because of the, I suppose, lack of encouragement from some awarding bodies, perhaps, to embrace more innovative, open forms of assessment. But that's becoming less and less. And I think we are on the right side of history, it feels like, in terms of empowering our staff to go beyond the essay. The essay is not there. There is always a place for these things. But what is really useful is maybe an essay perhaps alongside a defense of said essay with your lecturer in a 15-minute witness statemented discussion, perhaps, or maybe a viva, perhaps, or maybe a debate and the transcript is captured as accompanying evidence. Maybe real-world scenarios whereby local employers bookend on a Google Meet the project, giving a brief and jumping in every now and then in a chat group to see how they're getting on. Maybe it is screencast, much like we're doing right now, presenting and sharing. And before we hit record, rehearse it 10, 15 times. Because if you don't do it this way, and you have to just get up in class at 10:15 on a Tuesday morning, you won't rehearse or practice. Many of the students won't anyway. They'll just get up and just go, okay, just get it done. But if you empower them to have time in the practice and the space to hand in their 11th, 12th, 13th iteration in a personalized way, you get better results, we've found. It might be a podcast discussion, and the transcript is then used with the consent of the learner, of course, to assess using AI. We can assess the transcript quite well, in my experience, a podcast or vlog submission. I think the future of assessment has to be more authentic. I think that if we're assessing people in a way that a machine can eclipse human capabilities in seconds, then is that the best way to assess the human skills? If we know that human skills are more in demand than ever, according to the McKinsey report, the World Economic Forum, compassion, collaboration, critical thinking, then why aren't we assessing for those skills? Is the essay the best way to do that always? I think that the skill scanning reports that we see are an indication of the change that's coming, and awarding bodies are starting to change and embrace this and understand that they say you can, if you look at any spec, and again, AI can help put the PDF into AI. Can I assess learning outcome 3 in different ways? And it will say, yes, a viva, a professional discussion, a simulation. It will often say that. So I think we need to challenge our staff to go, well, is it the best way to show they know? And they might go, the awarding body, you know what they're like. Actually, awarding bodies are pretty good when you talk to them. And you actually say, look, this has happened, and this is generative AI is here. So maybe a written log isn't the best way for this. They're open, they're collaborators. We need to think of them as such.
Scott, you've just touched on something which actually then leads into the question I was going to ask you, which is specifically around the balancing the benefits of AI, personalization of learning, and that rich stuff that can come through that. But also, and it's something I know that you're really passionate about, and I share that with you, about how we create communities. But it's not just about in isolation learners working and teachers working to a certain extent. It's how do we build that community, balancing what we know AI can do in a way that enhances both aspects.
So those direct sort of one-to-one relationships through social ties that help us get a sense of belonging, our kinship, friendships, and that's like deeply human. We crave it more and more, and other learners crave it more and more as well, having been robbed of it for the last few years. This generation of learners we currently have post-pandemic. So I think to nurture those human skills we touched on, collaboration, critical thinking, problem solving, compassion, empathy, emotional intelligence, all these things we know to be more valuable than ever, to give them team projects, to give them real world scenarios, to give them things where they've got skin in the game in their community or towards their ambitions, where they've got autonomy to practice mastery with purpose, as Daniel Pink so wonderfully puts it in his book Drive. I think we'll see the best work that they'll ever produce, and they will bounce into their classrooms, and it'll be difficult to tell in the classroom where the teacher is, because there'll be teams in classrooms working alongside each other, and the teacher facilitating and being a confident conductor of different tech to help them is what I want to see. I don't want to walk into a classroom and see the teacher stood at the front, ever. It's always a red flag. I want to see, we'll go in and go, where's the teacher? That's when we're observing. That's always lovely when you walk in and see that. So I think that sense of community, that sense of belonging, and opportunities for them to practice that and to feel that deep, meaningful connection to something that matters with purpose, that will instill that lifelong learning that isn't just a catchphrase. I know it was used as such in campaigns in the past, but I do believe in it. That sense of lifelong learning, we're in a great position in FE to instill that. We could do it for these really meaningful projects where they've got genuine skin in the game. It matters to them, you know?
Couldn't agree more. So it was a privilege, Scott, to come to your college last month, which is a lovely place for education. And, you know, I'm truly impressed with the students and how the college looks and feels and atmosphere and whatnot. And I would encourage anybody to go and visit you as well, because it's just incredible. But it was a real privilege to listen to you and the other educators talking about your advances with using AI. It was really moving, in fact, I would say, your personal experience, your journey. So in regards to that, you've been very bold. You've embedded AI into your practices now for quite some time. For anybody that's listening to this, what would you, and they want to go away and implement and really think about how they're going to go about doing it, what are the pitfalls? What are the pain points between the teaching staff, maybe your kind of processes and your kind of compliance, and then, you know, and where are the pain points for the students as well? How did you get some of this over the line?
We've managed to get it over the line back in May or June by using the stats and data from the AOC about teachers fleeing the industry. That was the ace card, is the truth. And I used AI to help me generate a little mini report stating that there's a hole in the boat right now. So I'm not going to start varnishing the front if there's a hole in the boat, right? To fix the hole in the boat, we went. I said, well, Google Bard's there. It's up there. And we got it. Look. As always, a no cost prototype, low risk with 5 or 6 teachers, and we start everything that way. Prototypes with teachers who are, every institution's got them, people who lean into things and go, I'll give it a go. You know, your teachers who are open-hearted, and they tested it for about a week or 2, and the things they were doing, it was just astonishing. And then I went to my blind manager and I said, like, there's something in this. Can we try it with a scheme of work? And then that's when we had the story of Chris, our chef lecturer, who did his entire scheme of work in a year in 2.5 hours using these tools with his notes. We use Google Lens to zap up his text from Post-its and turn it into text, put it into a Google Doc, and then use that to shape it into lesson plans. And then that led to me having the realization that, okay, this is going at quite a speed, so we better form a group. So an AI ethics group. We've always had this, Mark, this sort of triangle of teaching and learning. I'll look at something and go, that's good, let's give that a go. And then I go to IT systems and I say, right, you lot, look at this. What do you reckon? Is it compatible? And then they'll go, nah, Scott, you can't touch that. It's a nightmare. That's not compatible. In which case, that's only got 1 tick. However, if they go, yeah, nice one, Scott, that's really good. Let's go for it. And then that's 2 ticks. Then I've got to get my 3rd tick. So I then go to GDPR team and I say, right, we filled in the DPIA form. We've mitigated all risks. Teaching and learning like it. IT like it. GDPR team, what do you reckon? And then they look at it and then interrogate it. And often that culminates in me sat on that table there, actually, with somebody or upstairs in their office. And playfully, in a team-like way, we go prepared and I make my claim. And then Greg, who's on paternity leave right now, he's so useful to me because with a twinkle in his eye, he challenges me. Why do you need this? Is it safe? Are you sure? How would it benefit? And he's that sparring partner for me. And he is more risk averse than me, it's fair to say. And I need that. And in the past, I've made mistakes by being just too open-hearted and vulnerable. And that's not. I'm now in a position where I can't take those risks anymore. Too much is at stake. So I need to know what I'm doing is secure and safe. So Google Gemini, we knew was a safe bet because of not only the GDPR statement underpins it, and teaching our staff not to put any sensitive data in there, but also the 9 ethical rules that Google have with AI. That really resonated with our digital well-being message and made me feel strong in that decision. And so that having 3 teams meet every month in an AI ethics group, every month since then, to talk about just because we could do this, should we, has been massively useful for me, Mark. And I've needed that, mate.
That's really interesting. And I suppose kind of the next step is you've managed to overcome some pain points and it's now in practice, and well done. I mean, it's amazing. At this point, are you now starting to see the additional benefits of where learning is being personalized? Because, you know, the great educators in this world that I admire, you're one of them, but there are many that I really admire who find different ways to ask questions of learners to get them be their best selves, but also just to tap into that that thing that could change their lives. They could really discover something about their own personal skills, their traits, their interests, their wants, their desires. And I think great educators can unlock that. Are you seeing AI being applied to learning in real time with your learners, enhancing their ability to respond, to create, to think, to imagine? What's your views on that?
That's far too kind, Mark. And Jamie, you're being far too very, very generous, and I massively appreciate your kindness. But yeah, far too kind. I've seen. Well, the thing is, it's ambiguous in terms of under 18-year-olds using it in the classroom just willingly, and us encouraging it. They are using it without us. We know that, but without that parental guardian consent, it's not something we've been overtly encouraging in the classroom. Those learners over 18 who've been signing our consent form, we've been all in working with those guys. So, for example, ESOL learners translating resources using Canva into their native language. Students turning text, not just ESOL learners, into podcasts so they can listen to it and personalize it in a way that makes sense to them, using 11 labs to change the voice so it's like a personalized podcast, relating concepts and simplifying them to metaphors and analogies that resonate with them. I did do a controlled test with some beauty students about 3 weeks ago where I got parental and guardian consent for these 3 or 4 beauty students. And it's a nightmare getting the guardian consent and things like that. So it's such a barrier for us at the moment. I just want to do it. I want to just teach everyone how to do this. But until then, we've got to, again, I need those checks, right? I would have jumped straight into it. But then, I can see Greg do it, and I need that. I can hear, and that's good. So, but these are 3 or 4 got their consent, and 2 of them were over 18 anyway, so they could sign it themselves. Anyway, we got Snapchat AI out. I taught them how to prompt using the wonderful Dan Fitzpatrick's framework, and they had a tanning exam to prepare for. Loads of exams on the beauty and media makeup courses, And so, and they used their Snapchat AI, which lives at the top of their Snapchat, and they gave it the prompt, help me prepare for my NCFE level 2 media makeup exam. The role, you are an expert in tanning, who is adept at giving advice and examples that relate to the following topic. Insert topic. One of the girls loved Premier League footballers, so she put Premier League footballers in. Another girl loved the Kardashians, put in Kardashians. And then they said, okay, now speak in a fun, informal tone and help me revise. Got my exam tomorrow. Go. Ding. And then their Snapchat was giving these 4 girls revision material using the different skin tones of different characters from Premier League or the Kardashians, and helping them understand the different amounts of I don't know, the alchemy and the wonderful sort of chemistry that goes behind tanning techniques, to help them understand different tolerances and levels they would need. And watching them do that, sat around with their phones out and realizing they were showing each other, look, that's in series 17 where Kim is at the gala, and that's when she needed a bit more. I can see more. I would need more in that context for her tanning, and that was really interesting. And also the example of the engineering student with autism who really liked the Dodge 2015 I shared at the conference with you guys, and we photographed the equation from the board, simplified it, explained it using metaphors and analogies relating to the Dodge 2015, its torque, its suspension, its design. That was like goosebumps for me.
Wow. Do you know?
It was just so personalized. But again, he was over 18. And also, more to the point, it wasn't him using it. It was the student support assistant next to him doing it alongside him. But God, I just want to give it to them now. You know?
Listening to you, Scott, I don't know what you think, Mark, but there's part of me that sort of wishes I was 17 again to experience what we have now from the perspective of a student compared to all of my student years, so to speak, because I listen to you, Scott, and I think, wow, imagine just how inspirational and engaging and provocative and brilliant education could now be. A bit like your earlier point, Scott, about what the prize could be with this, if we get this right. And I'm in awe of that, I think, wow, I'm itching to get back in the classroom again,
Oh, it's so good, man. I mean, so luckily I'm working with adult learners at the moment, and education and training as well. So next Wednesday, I'm doing a unit on resources with them. How good's that going to be? And so I'm gonna show them, here's Canva. Here's some VR with AI nudges baked within it. Here's what you can do with these Gemini prompts. And we're gonna create universes. To get next Wednesday night, and it's going to be incredible. And they will then in turn again focus on teacher well-being and saving them time. Free up, and they'll be able to pass that on to their learners. So I'm very lucky.
It's such an exciting time, isn't it? I mean, Mark and myself have been working away just recently on a big AI project, which is very bold and very very visionary. And some of your lessons came up in that, in the sense that we were talking about prompt engineering and prompt craft, as it's often called now, and how that's becoming rapidly almost like an essential skill to have. And I'm conscious of your time, and you've been incredibly generous in this. And frankly, Mark and myself could ask you probably 1,000 questions, and this could keep going till about 4 o'clock this afternoon or whatever. But because your insights and the richness of your experience is just remarkable. I mean, some of the things you shared already are just so impactful, probably more than you realize, Scott. But in the remaining minutes we've got, I'm going to just cobble together a few other questions I got in one question in some ways, which is, you mentioned earlier a little bit about some of the naysayers, if you like, which you always get with big change and disruption. So there's always going to be people who are scared of it. There's always going to be people who just don't know what to do with it. And one of the things that I've always seen as inspirational, really, in the way that you work, and I've seen the effect you have on the people around you over many years that we've known each other, going way back. And you have an infectious enthusiasm and lots of other skills, which I think are really essential for kind of being impactful in the way that you are. But in your words, if you were to codify sort of top tips for others who might be watching this and thinking about, well, I've got a lot of resistance to this AI thing, what would you recommend as a slightly codified sort of top tips to help people to overcome those barriers to resistance? Because you've had some huge success in this area and always have, whether it's AI or other things that you've brought in. You've always been very successful at enabling people to be innovative. And what would you share with people who are maybe struggling a little bit with that?
Thank you, Jamie. I remember in 2015 would have been, I was observed using Twitter in the classroom, and we were live streaming and debating with other colleges in America, in high schools, because they were 18, in America, Birmingham, Alabama. I found this lady on Twitter, and we were debating. It was a critical thinking unit, and I thought, well, we've got to get outside our echo chamber, our filter bubble here in Basingstoke, Hampshire. Let's talk to these guys here who, just on the cusp of the election, had very different views about gun crime, race, and representation than my largely liberal, largely kind-hearted, open-hearted learners perhaps were approaching it from. So it was, we live streamed them every day for about a week. We, in the Venn diagram bit, when the Americans and the English crossed over, we jumped on a live stream on Periscope. Remember that? Periscope on Twitter, and we had that discussion. And I remember it was electric. It was like the best lesson I ever did, and it was just exciting. And the students, to this day I still think it's the best thing I've done. Anyway, I remember after I did that, and I walked into a staff room, and a staff member who's no longer here saying, "Oh, Anthony, principal wants to see you. He's heard about what you're doing." And I went down to and everyone was like like at school when everyone goes, that very English thing, I think. I think it's the American equivalent. So I went down, I did the walk. And I didn't know. I was naive, because I just sort of come up from industry, I suppose, where we just use stuff like Dropbox and Google and stuff like that. And I went in, and I saw him. And Anthony, a brother, our principal, as you know, is an impressive man. He's got Muhammad Ali's signed gloves on the wall.
I know. I noticed that when I walked into his office.
Desk. Yeah, it's like an impressive. He's got a samurai sword, I think. Or maybe I just imagined that. But above but he said to me, "Scott, right?" I went, "Yep. I'm sorry about the Twitter stuff. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that." And he went, "It's great. Here's my phone. Get me on Twitter. I want to join him." And in that moment, I thought, okay, well, my career goes a different way because of that moment. The reason I say that story is because the anxiety of being the one person who does things and getting it wrong is enormous. So after that moment, I quickly realized that it can't just be me wondering whether I've done the right thing or not. I need other people. So student digital leaders is what I did. Students who are interested in using these things. They became my team. 1 day a week, they used to go into the staff rooms with me. Also, a lot of the staff at the college just didn't necessarily connect with me for whatever reason, just one man. And everyone's got their interests and different preferences. And my student digital leaders were able to connect with people that I couldn't necessarily connect with, even though I tried my best. Because different strokes for different folks, right? Yeah. So I was able to use them like Trojan horses, my digital leaders, and to go in staff rooms and classrooms and to help them to help me to kill them with kindness, for want of a better phrase, to the staff, and to show them how this can help you save time. This will help learners be more engaged and prepare them for the industry expectations. And that's what we did since 2016. And those guys grew into my apprentices, and now we've got a team. And I'm very, very lucky. And we've always had student digital leaders. And I would argue that if I've had any wins in my career, it's because of them. Because they give us that insight from this user perspective, rather than just my view, because my view is skewed. And it's not, and anxiety being the only person who is the lightning rod for any frustrations or anxieties about technology is overwhelming. And I'm an overly sensitive man, and that's just what I am. But the fact it's a team now, and it becomes a culture. Yeah. And then it's not just you. And I think so. To make it about what the students, you and the team, and what the community needs rather than just what one person wants, because that's how it was seen at first. Like, oh, it's just Scott trying to make us techie because that's stuff he likes. And that's how people saw me, and just and outright heckle me in my first few things I used to do. So I think make it about a team, a student leadership, digital leader group is the biggest bit of advice I can give anybody, and I'm very keen to sort of help anybody do that, because they'll transcend you then, and they'll grow into other things, and they'll go off and set up their own.
And from the outside looking in, I've had the privilege to see you literally do that over many, many years. I mean, we've had conversations in the past where I've said to you about what an inspirational leader you are, because I've seen you bring people into your team who in some cases were quite vulnerable and had a number of challenges to overcome, and I've seen them absolutely blossom and grow into the next generation of leaders going forward and go on to do extraordinary things. So you have authentically got a proven track record in literally doing these things that you talk about, which is again inspirational. I know you don't like all these words being attached to you because you're a very humble man, but it is a genuine privilege to
what if I was going,
damn right. In fact, you could be holding up all the awards you've won, Scott, because you've won more TES awards than anybody else.
No, it's nonsense.
Anybody else I know. But just on your point there about, you mentioned a couple of, well, I know we're running out of time now, so we will wrap it up in a couple of minutes, but you did mention some fascinating points there, again, about culture and about leadership. And when you were talking about Anthony there, I was mindful of like the role that leadership plays in this, and I've seen you do that personally. And I think we've all probably experienced that. You know, Mark and myself have probably experienced that in different ways as well. I mean, going back a few years, one of my former principals, I had a similar experience where I thought I got myself into trouble, Scott. You know, because I'd read this book by my now good friend David Price, OBE, called Open, about how we'll live and work and learn in the future. And I was so enthusiastic about it. I went into the college literally that morning, like buzzing with enthusiasm, didn't consciously think of anything. I just bolted straight for the principal's office. I think he was in a meeting at the time. And before his personal assistant could stop me, I just burst open the door. And without even looking at who else was in the room, I sort of said, if you just read one book this year, you've got to read this one, right? And then I walked out. And as I walked down the corridor, his staff sort of came to me and said, you shouldn't have done that. He was actually on the phone when you went in. And so anyway, a few hours later, I see him coming down this long corridor towards me, and I'm thinking, oh, this is where I have to fall on my sword here. I shouldn't have done that. And he just looked at me, put the book down on my desk, and said, yeah, I don't think you were wrong. That looks amazing. Let's see if we can have a chat with him.
That's beautiful. And then he become your friend and collaborate all those years later.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it starts off these amazing then connections of other things. And I think
I love that. Anybody who comes to me and goes, oh, this album, Scott, this album.
Yeah.
I'll go, right, I like you straight away. Anybody who comes to me or gives me a book, like you gave me a book, Jamie, didn't you? You sent a book to me with a lovely note, and I see that every day in my office when I leave, and I love that. It means so much to me that someone goes, oh, this is good, you'll like this. Anybody, I suppose mixtapes were back when we were younger was the equivalent, and I sort of, there's something deeply human about that connection. Are you like me? Are you in my tribe? Because I think you might be. And this book or this CD or whatever, I don't know if CD's an outmoded form of media, but you know what I mean. So I love that recommendations, sharing. I find that so human, and I think using technology, I'm a massive believer in it being used to connect us, to strengthen us, to to free up more of our time for that which matters most, and
100%.
And to help enhance us rather than diminish us. And I look at the same time, I've got an ambiguous relationship about technology. I am addicted to my phone. I put in blocks. It goes black and white at 5 o'clock. I've got timers on everything. I cannot trust my central nervous system to put things down. And so what hope for 16-year-olds? So we have a responsibility and a duty to show them that we can use this with guardrails, deliberately and intentionally, but we have to be mindful about the fact that this is it's like the first chapter in a superhero movie, you know, with Spider-Man sort of smashing into the skyscrapers, and he's getting his webs wrong. We're getting used to the superpower at this point. It's overwhelming, but we've got to be patient and help each other to navigate the waters carefully.
100%. And I think that's a beautiful way to probably wrap up the conversation. The final comment from me is that I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you have a picture. The background on your LinkedIn profile is 4 words. And those words are compassion, originality, responsibility, and empathy. And I couldn't think of anybody who embodies that more than you when it comes to education. And it's been an absolute privilege, as always, to have this little session today with you, and the first of many more, I hope. And we'll continue to support you and to amplify your work and the work that goes on at Basingstoke College of Technology, because the colleagues around you, the culture that you've created there, I think is quite extraordinary, actually, as Mark was saying when he visited, because you can feel it when you walk in. So we'll wrap up the recording here for today, but a huge thank you from everyone at Sea Learning and all your friends across the ecosystem of education for just sharing your thoughts and insights today, Scott. Massively appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
I appreciate the opportunity, gents. Thank you.
Thank you.